You ever see the news about the central bank raising or lowering interest rates and wonder, what does that actually mean for us? How does that one little number end up affecting everything, from car loans to giant companies building new factories? Well, today we're pulling back the curtain on the IS curve. It's the key that connects all those dots. And by the end of this, you'll be reading the economic headlines like you wrote them yourself. So here's the game plan. We'll kick things off with the big question at the center of it all. Then we'll meet the four main players, the spenders in any economy. We'll use them to actually build the IS curve, and we'll even figure out where that weird name comes from. Then, we'll look at what makes the whole curve move, and finally, see how it becomes an essential map for the people in charge.
All right, let's dive right in.
So here's the central mystery we're going to solve. Why is it that this one single number, the real interest rate, which is basically the true cost of borrowing money, has so much influence? I mean, this thing can kickstart an economic boom, or on the flip side, put the brakes on everything. How? To figure that out, we first have to understand who's actually spending the money.
And that brings us to the four main characters in our economic story. It's their collective choices, what they decide to buy, that really powers the whole system.
The one idea that ties them all together is something called planned expenditure. Now, the key word here is planned. This isn't just a record of what's already been spent, it's about what everyone intends to spend. It's the total demand for every single thing our country produces. You could say it's the engine of the economy.
First up, we've got consumption, which we just call C. And for most countries, this is the biggest piece of the pie by far. It's pretty simple. It's all the money spent by people like you and me. That morning coffee, a new phone, your rent, it's all in there.
Next, we have investment, or I. Now, quick heads up, when an economist says investment, they're not talking about buying stocks or bonds. They're talking about businesses spending money on things that'll help them grow in the future. Think new machinery, a new office building, or even the construction of new homes.
Our third spender is, you guessed it, the government. G stands for government purchases. This is all the money the government spends on stuff and services. We're talking everything from building new highways and schools to paying the salaries of soldiers and teachers.
And finally, we have net exports, or NX. This is where the rest of the world comes in. We just take the total value of everything we sell to other countries, our exports, and then we subtract the value of everything we buy from them, our imports.
So you put all those pieces together, C plus I plus G plus NX, and boom! That simple formula gives you the total planned expenditure. It's the grand total of all the demand in the entire economy.
Okay, so now we have our building blocks. Let's see how they all connect to that interest rate we talked about. This is where we actually start to assemble the IS curve.
Okay, here it is. This is the crucial link. Think of a higher real interest rate as the brake pedal for the economy. When it goes up, borrowing gets more expensive, so you and I are less likely to take out a loan for a new car. Businesses are less likely to borrow to build that new factory. It can even make the country's currency stronger, which makes our exports more expensive for people in other countries. You see the pattern? Higher rates mean less spending across the board.
And that relationship, that is exactly what the IS curve shows us. It's just a graph, and every single point on this graph shows a possible combination of an interest rate and a level of economic output where things are in balance, where the amount of stuff people want to buy is exactly equal to the amount of stuff being produced.
So it makes total sense that the curve slopes downward, right? It's a really clear picture of what we just talked about. As the interest rate that's on the vertical axis goes up, the total economic output on the horizontal axis goes down. It's that simple. Higher borrowing costs lead to less economic activity.
Okay, quick detour, because I know what you're probably thinking. Why on earth is it called the IS curve? It sounds random. Well, it's not, and we're about to see exactly why.
First, just imagine a super simple economy. No government, no trading with other countries. In a world like that, every dollar of income that's generated, we'll call that total output, or Y, has to go to one of two places. It's either spent on consumption, C, or it's put into investment, I. Now, let's do some really basic algebra. We just move consumption over to the other side of the equation. So now we have output minus consumption equals investment. Still with me? Okay, now for the final step. What do we call income that we get but don't spend on consumption? That's right, it's savings. S for savings. So that output minus consumption part of our equation is really just a fancy way of saying savings, which means for the economy to be in balance, savings has to equal investment. And there you have it. I for investment, S for savings, the IS curve.
So we know that when the interest rate changes, we move along the curve that's already there. But what happens if something other than the interest rate makes people want to spend more or less? Well, that doesn't just move a point on the curve, it shifts the entire curve, signaling a major change in the whole economy.
And government actions are a perfect example of this. Let's say the government decides to spend a ton of money on building new roads. That injects more spending into the economy, no matter what the interest rate is, so the whole IS curve shifts to the right. On the other hand, if they raise taxes, people have less money to spend, consumption goes down, and the whole curve shifts to the left.
But it's not always about concrete things like government spending. The legendary economist John Maynard Keynes had this brilliant phrase for it: animal spirits. He was talking about those waves of pure optimism or pessimism that can wash over an economy. If businesses suddenly feel great about the future, they'll start investing like crazy, even if interest rates haven't budged, and that will shift the whole IS curve to the right.
Okay, let's bring it all home. Why does any of this matter to us? Because the IS curve isn't just some abstract graph in a textbook. It's a real, practical map that people making big decisions use to understand what's happening in the economy and to figure out where it might be headed.
Think of this table as your ultimate cheat sheet for what shifts the curve. These are all what economists call autonomous changes, spending decisions that have nothing to do with the current interest rate. A big boost in government spending, a wave of business optimism, a surge in consumer confidence, those all push the curve to the right, which signals a stronger economy. A tax hike or a drop in confidence does the opposite, shifting it left.
And that's what it all comes down to. You now understand the map. You get the tools that policymakers are working with. So I'll leave you with this to chew on. If the economy is in a recession, meaning it's stuck on the left side of this graph with low output, how could a government use its power over spending and taxes to grab that IS curve and shift it to the right? The answer to that question is really the foundation of modern economic policy. Thanks for tuning in.